Hi guys, it's Teresa. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm gonna be filming both my January and my February wrap-up. I'd already filmed my January wrap-up, but the audio was really bad, so I'm refilming it now. I'm cutting the January portion down quite drastically because I already talked about 10 of the 12 books I read that month in my reading the favorite books by booktubers video, and I honestly, I'm assuming all of you have watched that video, so I'm not going to talk about them that much in this video because it kind of would just be me repeating myself, and it's honestly so long. It would be so long, so there's no point in that. Also, if you are hearing my voice, it's really bad. This is the third video I'm filming today and I'm still kind of sick and it's not doing its thing. It's not stepping it up, so I'm very sorry if I sound like I'm dying the entire way through, but we're gonna have to push through and get this video filmed, so let's do it. So for January, I'm just gonna tell you the books I read and link you to the video if you for some weird reason haven't seen it yet, and then talk about the 2 additional books that I didn't read for that challenge, and then we jump into the February portion, okay? So in January, I read Recursion by Blake Crouch, Skyward by Brandon Sanderson, If We Were Villains by ML Rio, On Lunatime by Amber Crawley, which I DNF'd, The Troop by Nick Cutter, which I also DNF'd, Lock Every Door by Riley Sager, Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik, and then the next one is The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren, and this one I'm actually gonna review because I haven't done so yet. Okay. This follows a really fun rom-com set around a wedding kind of thing. So the main characters Olive and Ethan are the sister, respectively, the sister to the bride and to the groom, and they hate each other but they have to kind of get along for the wedding. But then before the wedding, everyone gets, or at the wedding, everyone gets food poisoning, so the honeymoon, they can't go on a honeymoon, so instead Olive and Ethan are going in their place, kind of pretending to be this couple, and shenanigans ensue. Obviously a whole lot of very unrealistic, would never happen outside of a rom-com type of stuff. But that's fine because it's a rom-com, so we're here for it. This book is funny, cute, charming. I just love these types of stories, especially by Christina Lauren. They do such a good job of telling romances. Directly after putting it down, I wanted to give it 5-star, and I kind of did already on my Insta story, but then I thought about it a bit more and I realized there's some things at the ending that are so unrealistic and such contrived drama and don't make any sense that I couldn't in good conscience give this book a 5-star, so I bumped it down to a 4. But I still think it's a really fun story. Don't pick this up if you want everything in your romances to be super logical and realistic, but that's not what I was looking for when reading this book, and I honestly really enjoyed it and definitely recommend it. Moving on, I then read Rules for Vanishing by Kate Alice Marshall, Bunny by Mona Awad, and Girls with Sharp Sticks by Suzanne Young, which concluded all the books that I read for the challenge. And then my final book that month was I'll Never Tell by Catherine Mackenzie. This is a thriller set at camp, and I give this 4 stars as well. It follows the family who owns the camp, and their parents have just died, the original owners, and now it has to pass on to their children. But the parents suspected that one of the children, specifically their son, actually murdered a girl at camp 20 years prior, and he basically tasks his siblings, or his children, the suspect's siblings, to find out, or to decide whether or not they think their brother is guilty. And if he's guilty, then he won't get his part of the inheritance. The story is set in the present and in the past. And in the present, we deal with all the repercussions of the situation, which is really strange. And in the past, we kind of reconstruct the events of that night that led to a girl's death. I thought the book was really, really well written, and the way it retells the story from the past. And I really enjoyed the format in particular because it kind of shows you, after every chapter that's set in the past, it shows you a timeline where you see where every one of the main characters was at every hour. And the more information you learn, the more this entire thing is filled in, and it kind of literally fills in the picture for you. So it's really, really cool, very interesting concept, and I felt very connected to the story as well, and I really enjoyed this one. Okay, now that January is finally wrapped up, we can move on to February, and for this I'm going to go back to my usual format of doing this, which is starting with the worst book I read this month. The worst book I read in February, unfortunately, was The Other People by CJ Tudor. This was the Literally Dead book club pick for the month, and I'm really excited for this book club, and I'm really hoping that the future books are going to be better, because this one just wasn't for me. I did a full-on rant review, like kind of impromptu, because I was still sick. I did it yesterday. I'm still sick today. It's not that different, but I did a full-on rant review about this that you can watch. It's mainly spoilers, so beware. But I thought this book was unnecessarily convoluted and extremely illogical, and there were some elements to it that I really didn't like. And I just don't think that the author really used the potential that this book had to its full extent. This one follows a man who's driving home from work one day, and then in front of him sees in a car his daughter Izzy, who's 5 years old, and she's kind of just pulled down when she sees him. So he's really worried, obviously, and calls home, where a police detective picks up and tells him that his wife and daughter have been murdered. And he's like, no, that's not possible, because I just saw my daughter. And they don't believe him, but he goes off in search for his daughter and won't rest basically until he finds her. And that's kind of the story of this book. Like, I had so many better ideas of ways in which the story could have gone, and I mentioned some of them in the video if you want to watch that, but I just think this was unfortunately a big letdown, and I didn't feel it was suspenseful. I just was kind of annoyed at the nonsense. Which, if you know me, you will know that I hate nonsensical thrillers more than anything, because that's the point of the thriller, I think. It's supposed to be as realistic as possible to scare you, but if it's like this, it just doesn't work. So this is bad, unfortunately. But that was it for bad books I read this month. Everything else I really actually enjoyed. I have one 3-star, which was The Incendiaries by R.O. Kwon. This is a book about two college students. Both have Korean backgrounds, but they live in the US. And the girl basically gets drawn into a cult with ties to North Korea. And the man is, trying to prevent this from happening, but they're both very toxic people, and they keep hurting each other, and they have like a lot of past issues to deal with. It's an interesting book, but I felt like it fell flat in a lot of ways, because to me, the most interesting aspect of the book was the cult, and especially since it's supposed to have ties to North Korea, like what are those ties? What does this matter? Because it's in the blurb as like this prominent thing, but it's not actually picked up really in the story, and just kind of thrown in as like a side information, but never fully developed. I also felt like there were a lot of questions that weren't answered, and the focus was just too heavily for me on Will, the main character's faith, and his struggles with faith and religion. And I know that was probably just like the point of the book, but to me, I expected something different, and so it wasn't fully what I wanted from it. It's still a good book, it's still well written, but kind of disappointing in the end. And then the last 3 books I read this month were all 4 stars. The first is In a Dark, Dark Wood by Ruth Ware. And this is actually really surprising to me, because I did enjoy The Turn of the Key, but I'd heard that that was like her best book. And especially In a Dark, Dark Wood, people were like, this is not that great. But honestly, I really enjoyed it. I don't know why people don't like this. I think it's great. It follows the woman who is invited to a bachelorette party by a very like long lost friend, who she hasn't talked to in like 10 years, but who used to be her best friend. And she kind of gets drawn back into their old kind of toxic relationship. And then they like go to this cabin in the woods, like really abandoned, to celebrate this party, and a murder occurs and stuff happens, and it's just like, it's really well written, it's really suspenseful. I've said this for The Turn of the Key as well. I think Ruth Ware has a huge talent in creating atmospheric and just really spooky books. They're just like quietly scary. They're not in your face with the huge plot twists or the like psychological terror, but it's just like the atmosphere of it overall that's really creepy. And I couldn't put this book down. I read it in a single day, and I really enjoyed it overall. I mean, I did see the ending kind of coming, but it didn't detract from my overall enjoyment of this at all, and I definitely recommend it. And then I read Unspeakable Things by Jess Lurie. This is a really difficult book to read, and I honestly struggled through this at times because it deals with so many heavy and dark subject matters, and you're just thrown right in the middle of it, and you experience it as if you were in that situation, I think, which is part of why the book is so good, but also why it's honestly, I had struggled to finish this at times. This book follows a young girl who lives in a small town with her family, and her family is like really toxic, really abusive, especially her father, and her parents are so strange. Like, I wanted to just like punch him in the face the entire book. Ugh, oh my god, just thinking about her dad is like making me vomit. Her parents have like these sex parties, orgies at their house where the children are, and like, oh my god, I just can't. I can't. These people are so fucked up, honestly. And yeah, it's just like not a safe atmosphere for her at home. And then also throughout the town, boys are starting to go missing and being returned like different, like changed. There's just like a whole lot of stuff happening in this book. It's as I said, it's so difficult to get through, not because it's particularly gruesome or graphic, but kind of because it's not. There's just like this constant oppressive atmosphere of menace and danger and ickiness going on, and it's really, like, just thinking about this book again puts me right back there. And it's wonderfully written and well done because it does achieve that atmosphere and giving you that feeling. But at the same time, I struggled through this a lot. I had times where I just couldn't read it at all for like a week straight because, oh, it made me feel so icky. So that's something that you should bear in mind when reading this book. But I still recommend it if you can handle these topics because it is well done, and it's just a book that you probably won't forget again that quickly. And then finally, I read Long Bright River by Liz Moore. This is also a difficult book to read. I don't know what I was doing this month. I was reading a lot of heavy things. This book follows a young police woman whose sister is a drug addict living on the streets, and the main character, Mickey, is working as a patrol officer in the area where she works, trying to keep an eye on her. At the same time, trying to raise her own son, trying to live her own life, trying to stay away from her own ex, who's also problematic. And there's just a whole lot of stuff happening in this book. It deals with drug addiction in such a way that really feels like a very frank, truthful account of what could possibly happen in someone's life when they are addicted to heroin or some other heavy drug like that. How this has consequences, very dire consequences, not just for the person who's addicted, but for their loved ones. Like how the ripples that this causes, how far they go, how far reaching they are, and how deep the hurt and pain to everyone involved is. And it's really difficult to read for that very reason. There's also a mystery element to this book because these drug addicts in that area are starting to be killed, and it's made to look kind of like an overdose. They're like, oh, this is just like a drug deal gone wrong or something like that. But Mickey doesn't believe that, and so she like really digs into that, especially because at the beginning of the book, her sister goes missing and she's worried that she might turn out to be another victim very soon. I felt like the mystery aspect of this was very quiet, and even though it is kind of made to be the main point of the book, I don't think it is that center stage necessarily. It is something that's going on in the background that you're like working on the entire time, but it's very slow paced and not necessarily like thrilling or super suspenseful. That wasn't really the aspect that I was most invested in. It's mostly just this relationship between the sisters and their lives and how we like learn more about them and how her sister fell into this addiction and just more and more layers of tragedy and horrible, like both life choices as well as events happening to them that they couldn't really influence, heaped on top of each other. And yeah, it's difficult to read. It's difficult to imagine that this is actually happening, but I'm sure it is. And I think books like this really help to like make you more aware of that and make you more just tune into that and like more grateful for your own life if this isn't happening to you. So overall, I really enjoyed this, gave it 4.5 stars in the end, and I definitely recommend that you check this out if you're interested in this type of story. I'm sorry this video was kind of rushed. I just feel like my voice dying more and more as I speak, and it's getting really difficult to like be energetic and like, yeah, putting myself in it with my full energy because I don't have any anymore. So I still hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you read in February and maybe January if you want to share. And I hope to see you back very soon with another video. Until then, have a lovely week. Bye.